Looks right around Huntley. He reaches. Oh, that ball's out. That's live. Back the other way. Sam Hubbard. The Cincinnati Kid. Hubbard's got a convoy. Chased by Andrews. At the 30. The 20. He will score.
To the end zone. Down the field. And it is deflected. And gone. Touchdown. A.J. Green.
Goes back to throw. Men are coming late. Looks right down the middle. There's Eddie Brown. He has it at the 35 to the 30. He may go 10-5. Touchdown.
Now the Bengals Super Bowl chances rest on his right foot. The kick is up.
Yeah.
It is good.
Corey Dillon. He's gone. The knockout punch. You're looking at it. 65 yards.
And they're back to throw as the blitz is on. Goes long, intended for Collinsworth. He has it down to the 20. Touchdown. And Chris Collinsworth.
Throwing the long ball. Deep down the field. Johnson's got it. Touchdown. Cincinnati.
Look at Chase go. Oh my goodness, what a gear he just found. Case for the touchdown. Wow, Chase is on the case.
It is no fluke. It is a fact. The Cincinnati Bengals are headed to Super Bowl 56. The play clock at 3. Shotgun snap. Carr throws into traffic. Intercepted. Jermaine Pratt has the football.
Yeah.
Coffin nails.
Bam, bam, bam. How about that?
There were some questions about whether or not we'd be here today after the events of this last weekend, but alas, as always, Tuesday night, 6 p.m. rolls around. Jacob Tissett, Craig Sandlin, here to break it all down from this past weekend. Chatterbox Bengals, back as always. Craig, this might be the most somber episode we've had yet because one of us has been able to accept that this team might not be very good for a while now. The other one of us is starting to come around a little bit. Over the last few days, I've started to swallow the pill that maybe this Bengals team just isn't very good, Craig. You've been trying to tell me for a long time, but as we get deeper into it, we're going to figure out why, and there sure are a lot of holes with this team. It's a waste of time to ask you how you're doing because all Bengals fans are doing the same right now, and it's real, real bad. But I'll still throw it out there. Haven't talked to you since Sunday, some time's passed. How are things? We getting over it a little bit?
Yeah, look, things are good. The difficult part about this whole thing is that we came into this season, we got a last place schedule. Joe Burrow's wrist is going to be healthy. We got we got Jamar, we went out and got Zach Moss. So Chase Brown's going to have an elevated role. The expectations were sky high. We're going to have the number 1 seed in the AFC. We're going to be competing for a Super Bowl, and it hasn't gone that way. And I was able to do it pretty quickly. I know it's been a struggle for you, but I've tempered my expectations at this point. We're going to beat the trash teams like we should. We're going to struggle with the good teams. If we can win a coin flip here and there, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to be excited about it. But other than that, I'm setting expectations where they belong. Tell you what, though, if they find a way to lose to the Raiders this weekend, then we got a whole nother story coming.
That's
but
right.
For now, things are fine. I've reset expectations on the season and on a week by week basis. So I hope that this coming to terms with the realization that this Bengals team is not very good has been a satisfying process for you and has gotten you to a place of calm mentally. And at this point, it feels like that's the most valuable thing that anyone can have.
That's right. It has helped a little bit getting over the anger, more into a little bit of sadness as it starts to set in. But I think what you're talking about right there is one of the hardest things for sports fans to do. And before we get into the key plays, just resetting the expectations of a team in the middle of the season is so difficult. And I'm talking about both ways. When a team drastically outplays their expectations early in a season, it's easy to take moral victories every step of the way when you look at the team on film and say, oh, they're a lot better than we expected. We should expect more than before. And has that been the case with some Bengals teams in this era? Maybe. This team, obviously, we expected them to be a Super Bowl contender. They are clearly not. And it's just as hard to move those expectations down and realize that this just isn't a good team. And to expect them to still play at a Super Bowl caliber level is expecting players that simply can't do that to play at a level they can't play at. So it's important to do that and adjust, and that's the only way we're going to be able to get through these next 9 weeks. And as we get into these plays, there were some positives. We'll start with one of them, the first drive of the game for the Bengals. One of the best offensive drives of the entire season for any NFL team, and it was because of Joe Burrow's ability to extend plays. And here we saw him running, finding open space, and dumping it off to Mike Gesicki. But the thing I want to point out from this angle here is Alex Kappa. What a great play by 65, who is left alone there, goes to find work, and seals off Nolan Smith there on the edge, giving Joe Burrow the time to get outside the numbers and find Mike Gesicki, who makes a good little shake on Cooper DeJean and finds the open space behind him. Such a crucial play to keep the drive going, extend the drive, and Mike Gesicki continues to produce when T. Higgins is not in the lineup, finding open space on the scramble drill. Such a great feat for a tight end, something you don't usually see from that position.
Well, I'm glad Alex Kappa was able to make this play because we're going to show a play later on where I'm not really sure what he's doing. So, but look, I think the other piece of this that is really impressive to me is the patience of Joe Burrow. As Mike Gesicki early on, he has the opportunity where he could have dumped it down, but instead you see him run out of the pocket. He waits until Cooper DeJean bites and sells on him. And once that happens, he knows that Mike Gesicki is open. But when you roll it, what you see is obviously from almost the very beginning, Mike Gesicki is open. Now, obviously the Eagles do a good job. They collapse the pocket early. He could throw it to him now and they could gain 5 yards, but instead he continues. Cooper DeJean drops off of Mike Gesicki, and then it opens it up for Gesicki to pick up the first down. Great play by a number of people on that one. And Alex Kappa, Joe Burrow, and Mike Gesicki all deserve tip of the cap for sure. And then, just finishing the play and it started this drive and this game just started off so positive, Jacob.
Yeah,
it
3
really
straight
did.
games with amazing vibes out of the gate and then just pissing down our leg for the remainder of the game. Certainly not the most fun outcome, but that was a great play by Burrow, and I think probably the most underrated part of his game. I think at this point in his career, everyone knows how good Joe Burrow is. People are recognizing the season he's putting on, even with the Bengals' shortcomings in the record department, but his ability to avoid pressure like that, he's never talked about as a runner, and he probably shouldn't be. He's not in the top, part of the league in terms of a dual threat quarterback, but we've already seen a 50-yard touchdown run this year against the Giants, and then a play like this to avoid pressure, obviously running to throw, but something he does so well. It's just such an underrated part of his game, the ability to move in and outside the pocket, run when he needs to, and use his legs when obviously his arm and his brain is what's obviously talked about with him the most. That's such a great thing for him to have. Here, the next sequence, the most frustrating offensive sequence of the game, the one that's been talked about the most for sure, the 3rd and 4th down. And when Craig and I were talking about pulling these 2 plays, he actually reminded me of something that I had forgotten from watching the game live. And it was the first down on this series was an 8-yard gain. The Bengals punted from a 2nd and 2. We'll start this series of clips from that 2nd down, and you'll see a handoff to Chase Brown for 1 yard. Nakobe Dean just flies around the corner, and what you can see from this angle is Ted Karras just can't get to him. Simply too slow to get to Nakobe Dean as Dean flies around the corner to make the play on Chase Brown. A play that's really foiled from the start. But Nakobe Dean fills the hole, if there is one to be there, for Chase Brown to cut through, simply because Ted Karras couldn't get there. Such a frustrating play from a guy in Karras who has really been a good center in his time in Cincinnati, been a great addition to this line, just unable to get there, whether it's a lack of athleticism or the age.
Pause this.
I thought I did.
I should have sent. You're good. I should have sent this play by play. I really should have, and we could have broken down every single play.
I'll be quick with the play pause. We got it.
You're good. I think this one is exactly what you said. I think at the end of the day, they just didn't get to the second level, and the Eagles linebacking crew just did a great job. They collapsed on the hole. I think ultimately the one thing that I question here, if you go back, I think this is the view that shows it better. If Chase Brown just takes this ball right up the gut, he picks up a first down. And I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things that is a challenge sometimes for these young running backs is they see this wide open space outside and they want to try and attack that. But they got to remember that they're not the fastest guy on the field anymore like they were in college. And so
Right.
for Chase Brown, who's got that explosiveness for sure, to see that at the end of the day, if he goes straight ahead behind Cody Ford on that run, he picks up a first down and they move the chains. And that's really the most important piece of that. But instead, he tries to cut it outside. Nakobe Dean, as you mentioned, too quick, meets him at the line of scrimmage, and he's unable to pick up the first down. And we go forward to 3rd and 1.
3rd and 1, carry to Zach Moss, and not much to see from this angle other than just getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Really what I want to talk about is here, and you can see it on that right end outside of Amarius Mims. Number 62, that's Matt Lee, the backup center, the 7th round pick out of Miami in this most recent draft. He reported as eligible. He's going to be an extra lineman on the end of the line of scrimmage. And what does that formation tell you, Craig? Because to me, it clearly says he's running the ball to the right. You bring in the extra offensive lineman to play outside the tackle, Eric All, on that side as well. Clearly seems like a run right. I'm not crazy to say that, right? And then Joe Burrow checks the play. And as soon as he checks the play, sorry, it was a little too quick. You couldn't see him check it there. As soon as Joe Burrow puts his hands to his helmet and checks that play, as you see right at the beginning of that screams to me that you're running it the other way. And that's exactly what the Bengals do, hand it off to Moss right behind Cody Ford, which is an issue in and of itself, giving him the ball behind Cody Ford. But after watching this again, I'm not necessarily mad about that because I don't think that was the play call. I think the play call was a run to the right, and Joe Burrow checked it to run it behind Cody Ford because of the look the defense gave. That's certainly what it seems to me from the beginning there. And Cody Ford, just unable to do his job, gets pushed back. Linebacker goes under his legs, cuts him down, and Zach Moss stacked at the line of scrimmage, which brings us to the 4th down and one of the worst play calls of all time. This play,
Don't do that one yet.
a little bit
yet.
more
We're not
interesting.
ready for 4th and down.
No, I know.
We're
I'm
not
just
ready
saying
for fourth
this
down
3rd
yet,
down was a
Jacob.
little bit more interesting than I thought originally. I thought it was just a standard bang-bang handoff play with the check and the extra offensive lineman, stuff I didn't recognize live.
Yeah. Well, so the thing, you mentioned the defensive lineman, right? You can see that Cody Ford and Cordell Volson, there's a clear gap that if they can just win their matchups,
That's right.
then Zach Moss should be able to fall forward for a first down. But what you'll see is when you run the tape, go ahead and run it for a second, just real quick, and then pause it as soon as the play starts. So Eric All comes over, Cordell Volson's trying to block and seal off there. Cody Ford trying to seal. Now play it just a second and watch Eric All. And this is just, he's a rookie. What is he doing? He just goes in the back of Drew Sample and Cody Ford, who's already double teaming a guy. Okay. So now you have Alex Kappa, and this is the play where I don't understand what Alex Kappa is doing. It makes me wonder if this play wasn't designed to go to the outside and Zach Moss cut it inside trying to pick up that first down, and Nakobe Dean just met him at the line. But between Eric All, who's blocking a double team, Alex Kappa, who's pulling, I'm not 100% sure what the play design was, but then Cody Ford, obviously too slow. But you've got 4 guys there trying to block 2 guys, and
Right.
none of them can win. And then you've got Nakobe Dean coming up, just, again, basically unblocked until the last minute, completely disrupting the play. And so, again, going back to your initial point is that play is originally drawn up to go to the right, it seemed, where, again, we don't know, but Amarius Mims, if he wins that, you've got Matt Lee, you've got Eric All, you've got the numbers there to potentially win that matchup.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about Joe Burrow and his intelligence, and that's certainly been talked about a lot, but this is now like the 4th or 5th time that I can remember that we're talking about Joe Burrow audibling or changing a call at a line of scrimmage that's resulted in nothing. And we heard it a couple weeks ago when they were trying to ice the clock, and he changed to a run play on, we think, 2nd down. And at the end of the day, I don't know if it's Joe Burrow being conservative. I don't know if it's just being predictable. But at the end of the day, this offensive line has not been good enough in the run game, and that's really what it comes down to. That's a look right there when you've got 5 men at the line of scrimmage and only 1 linebacker. You should win that all day to be able to pick up 2 yards in a first down.
I mean, that's exactly
There's
what you're
zero
asking
reason
for on a run play.
Yeah, there's zero reason with that play right there, with the jumbo package that you have in, including Drew Sample, that you shouldn't be able to win those matchups and pick up 2 yards. Because that's all you're asking for. Zach Moss should be able to fall forward and pick up 2 yards. And the Cordell Volson gets pushed back. You have 4 guys blocking 2 guys on the outside. Alex Kappa's got nobody right now. It just either is a poor play design, very possible, a poor read by Joe Burrow, very possible, and just a flat out loss by the offensive line, which is a consistent storyline for this Bengals team right now, is that this offensive line is not good enough, especially in the run game, to get it done. Do you know what Alex Kappa's PFF grade was for this past weekend?
Do I want to know?
No, 38.6.
Yeah, that's
Do you know
not
what
great.
Cordell Volson's was? 48.3. They were 2 of the 3 lowest graded players on the Bengals this weekend. Your 2 starting guards.
Yeah.
The interior of this line is not good enough right now in the run game and in the pass game, if we're being honest, to get things done. And so you end up in situations like that where you have second down and short in back-to-back plays, you're unable to convert on running plays, and you're left having to do this on fourth down.
Just a head-scratching play call, to say the least. We all know what it was at this point. A motion swing pass to Jamar Chase, a few yards behind the line of scrimmage that's just absolutely blown up by Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean just flies in there and chops down Jamar Chase, unblocked, untouched. Not a lot of help for Chase on that side of the field, really leaving him all to his lonesome out there to try to pick up the first down, and just has no chance with a great play by DeJean. Certainly, if you're going to run a swing pass to Jamar Chase, I would think you have a couple blockers out there, but not the case as Chase is left 1-on-2 in the open field, and obviously sometimes he makes this work, but the fact that we're designing plays on fourth down for Jamar Chase to beat a man or two in open field with no help to block is just head-scratching, to say the least.
Yeah. I'm interested in your opinion on this. I've watched this, obviously, multiple times.
Yeah.
Do you think Jamar sells the motion well enough? It almost feels like, to me, that he doesn't sell the motion back to the top well enough and get DeJean off of his base enough.
DeJean never even crosses the linebacker.
He should be open. Right. So, to me, if Jamar Chase sells that a little bit better, DeJean crosses back across the linebacker, they cross up at the snap, then maybe Jamar Chase is wide open. The other piece of it that a lot of people are talking about is that hesitation right there by Andre Yoshivas. At the end of the day, if you're not going to have a blocker out there for Jamar Chase, Andre has to be explosive off the line and win that battle right off the line to be able to affect Cooper DeJean. And neither one of those things happen.
Right.
You can see the corner that's on Andre waving Cooper DeJean around him because he knows that he's going to win that man-up matchup and be able to affect Andre Yoshivas enough to where Cooper DeJean can come out and win that matchup. But to me, if Jamar Chase sells that a little bit better than just that one step back, sells it a little bit like, I hate to bring this up, but we talked about it on Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs are phenomenal at designing these kind of little wrinkles in their motion. If Jamar Chase sells that a little bit better, he may have Cooper DeJean in a position where the linebacker affects his ability to cover him, or he just gets off balance enough and it affects his ability to cover him.
Yeah.
I think there's so many pieces of this. Obviously, the play call we've talked enough about. I don't like that, but to do that and run that screen with zero protection out there doesn't make a lot of sense from Zach Taylor, and he acknowledged that this week. He owned up to the fact that it was a bad play call. Not really sure what else he's supposed to say at this point. Of course he's supposed to take it, but it was a bad play call. I just think that it was poor job by the 2 wide receivers and Andre Yoshivas and Jamar Chase in terms of their roles in that play, just not necessarily being championship caliber that you would expect and hope for in a big moment like that.
Yeah, and this back angle of it shows exactly what you're talking about on that motion. DeJean stays in front of Chase on that return motion. he is still in front of Chase, further towards where that route is going to end up than Jamar is after that return motion. Certainly doesn't sell it enough, and then just untouched around the edge, like you said, because of the poor release by Yoshivas, and blows up the play. I mean, that play just had no chance from the start, which is the most frustrating part about a 4th and 1 after a 2nd and 2, is that you're just unable to get short yardage at a point in the game where it matters the most. You're down 7. It felt like things were really getting away from you. That's why going for it isn't necessarily the wrong call. Third quarter, I would lean to punt, but with the way that game was feeling, the way it was going, picking up that 4th down felt crucial. And that's the best 3-play series you can think of, is that? To get 1 yard? It's just abysmal. And it comes back to a point where we're going to get to later, and it's, what is this offense able to do scheme-wise without elite weapons? If you don't have multiple elite weapons, I feel like Zach Taylor gets in certain situations like this, must convert, must get 1 yard, and his brain just short circuits. He goes, have to throw the ball to Jamar Chase. Let's take the ball out of Joe Burrow's hands. No decision making. Well, you got to just get the ball to Jamar Chase. He'll make something happen. He'll save me again. And it didn't happen this weekend. And that really stinks to see, because we have seen him save, Zach Taylor and the rest of this team many, many times on great plays. I mean, he took a 70-yard screen pass for a touchdown to take the Ravens game to overtime? Talk about saving Zach Taylor. And this
but
time
he also had 2 blockers in front of him on that play.
Exactly. Right. No, absolutely. And to run a play like this with no help to Chase's side on the block, banking on Yoshivas to get a clean release and influence Cooper DeJean, or at least get in his way a little bit, just an unacceptable play design, in all honesty. And I know you said we shouldn't be, killing the play call because we've done that enough, and it's a tired argument, and it is. You're right, but I can't imagine a lot of NFL coaches playing for quote-unquote Super Bowl, or coaching for quote-unquote Super Bowl contenders, calling a play like that in a must-convert situation in a game that feels like a must-win. And I guess that comes back to whether or not we're Super Bowl contenders, because if you have must-wins in Week 8, then you're certainly not. But one more positive.
That really was the end of the game right there. I mean, absolutely. Just to spell it out, I mean, the Eagles had just scored on a Devontae Smith 45-yard touchdown, which is the play I think we're about to show. Or are we doing another one first? Okay.
There was one first, but we can go to it.
It doesn't matter. Either order. Nonetheless, the point is you're down 24-17 after giving up that long touchdown.
Yeah.
You go and you give up the ball on downs at your own 39-yard line. The Eagles obviously have an easy drive there coming up after that, where they only pick up 4 yards on the drive and kick a field goal. They go up 27-17, and then you've got the interception, another Eagles touchdown, and then Mike Gesicki fumble, and it just all went downhill. And it you saw it in Joe Burrow after the game. It just doesn't feel like they have the confidence right now that they once had, and that this team kind of thrives off of. And I just wonder how much that play calling and that sequence there really affected their outlook on that game in particular, and maybe even larger scale on the season as a whole.
Yeah, certainly a big thing that we've talked about with many teams this year is how confidence in the coach having confidence in the players, and the players having confidence in the coach, how that could just sway the vibes in a game and really end up resulting in wins and losses. And you have to wonder if some of that's starting to take place in Cincinnati. We will go to that Devontae Smith bomb touchdown now. Just a really frustrating play for this defense, kind of all around, from a lot of guys that we've asked to see more out of this year, both in terms of snap count and production. A great throw and catch by Hurts and Smith, but not the key point I want to talk about here. The one thing that needs to be talked about is over there on the left side of your screen, the hometown kid, our dear friend, Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard lined up across from Lane Johnson, one of the best right tackles in the history of football. It's not his fault if he doesn't get pressure. Lane Johnson eats every edge rusher alive, right? Well, Lane Johnson doubles down on B.J. Hill. And Jack Stoll, the third-string tight end of the Philadelphia Eagles, decides that he's going to block Sam Hubbard one-on-one and takes care of business as Jalen Hurts steps up in a clear pocket and delivers a great deep ball to Devontae Smith. Craig, I texted you and asked what play that Sam Hubbard was blocked by the tight end, because I remembered it happening, but I couldn't quite put my finger exactly on when it was in the game. And you said, oh, it was the Devontae Smith bomb touchdown. Of course it was, Craig. Of course it was, right?
Yeah, because it wouldn't be salt in the wound enough for Sam Hubbard to get locked up by the third string tight end on just a standard 5 or 10 yard pickup. No, it had to be done on a 45-yard bomb to Devontae Smith for a touchdown. But I'm glad you brought that up. That's not actually what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is what happens when you have a solid running game. This is a play action pass. You can see that they fake the handoff to Saquon. Look at where Jordan Battle is when they fake this handoff. Jordan Battle is going to come down. He's going to think that it's a run play. He comes down 2 or 3 yards, realizes, oh shoot, this is play action, and now go ahead and run it. Devontae Smith is already behind him. It's too late. And I realize that he does a good job of catching up and getting to it, but that's a much different play if Jordan Battle doesn't crash on the run in those first 2 yards.
The linebackers as
what
well.
Happens there. Yeah, the linebackers as well. Everybody's crashing on the run because they're respecting Saquon Barkley. But instead, Devontae Smith is able to get behind him. Now imagine if Jordan Battle's dropping back down into a safety position on that play. You can see the depth that Von Bell has on this play. Now imagine if Jordan Battle has that same depth on this play instead of where he was. Devontae Smith, if anything, has to round that route off and come towards the sideline. But because of where Jordan Battle was, he cuts it upfield and is able to take it deep. That's a choice route where Devontae Smith sees that Jordan Battle is crashing. If Jordan Battle is back in the deep secondary, even with Von Bell, this is a much different play for the Eagles and ultimately may have been a much different outcome on the drive as a whole. But because Jordan Battle respected the run of Saquon Barkley, he crashes the run along with the linebackers, doesn't get back, and Devontae Smith is able to get behind him versus being deeper and having to force Devontae Smith to round that route off and head to the sideline. Instead, he heads to the goal line.
That's what happens when you have a running back with over 100 rushing yards and over 5 yards a carry for the entirety of the day. I mean, this guy was just killing this defense all day long. You have to respect him in moments like this. And then that's why when we talk about the Bengals, the crucial nature of having a balanced offense is because when people do respect the run and actually believe that you might run the ball, it frees up the downfield passing. And what's one of the main gripes a lot of Bengals fans have with this offense right now? Not enough downfield attack. Where does that come from? A lack of run game for a lot of part. You don't have time to develop downfield passing if you can't run the ball. If no one respects the run, you can't run play action passes, which is how a lot of those deep shots come to form. It's incredibly frustrating to see other teams do the basics so well. Obviously, Saquon Barkley's a little bit more than a basic running back, but teams run the fundamentals so well, and the Bengals continue to struggle to find any kind of balance on offense. And the Eagles are a team that ran the ball phenomenally and found the balance in the pass game by trading for A.J. Brown, drafting Devontae Smith, extending those guys, watching Jalen Hurts mature as a thrower. The Bengals have the passing offense down, or at least we thought before the last 3 weeks. They need to match it in the run game with some kind of investment. And I understand Chase Brown's been a very explosive runner, and maybe he's the answer at the running back position. And the investment needs to come in more athletic offensive linemen who can block in the run game. But either way, wherever it does come, this play right here, and I know it was a pass play, but it's a perfect example of why having a respectable run game is so crucial for every team, even a team with elite weapons like the Eagles.
Yeah. The offensive line is certainly something that needs to be addressed. And, I was going to wait till how to fix it before we get too much into that. But at the end of the day, it just is what it is. And I did have one other note on that play, Devontae Smith, that I think I forgot to mention up was Mike Hilton is lined up over Devontae Smith on that play. And it looks like he's supposed to get at least affect that route a little bit. And all he does is like touch him, which is kind of funny to me. I just thought
he does wave his hands.
I don't know what he literally just like pats him on the back and says, all right, see ya, which is just funny to me. But nonetheless, I just, it just the offensive line needs help. The defensive line needs help, but it's the same old story. It's the same things that we knew coming into this year that the Bengals were struggling in and that needed to be addressed. And it just chose not to address it.
That's right. And I only had this here before we get into how to fix it because I don't know how to describe this game as a whole other than an embarrassment. I've put it on every thumbnail and video title I've had the luxury of making for Chatterbox since this game ended, because that's all it was an embarrassment. And it was really both sides of the ball putting up an absolute stinker. And it's something that for the vast majority of the beginning of this season, we didn't think was possible. We thought this offense was going to be able to withstand any kind of thing that was thrown at it defensively and being able to put up points every single game. And if we lost, it was going to be because they got outscored because the defense isn't very good. But now 3 weeks in a row, we've seen 17 points, 14 points, 17 points from this offense. And that's just not a good offense. Scoring that little in the NFL doesn't win you games with a great defense a lot of the time. You have to be able to put up points in this league. What did we talk about with this Browns offense being historically bad with Deshaun Watson to start this season? They hadn't scored 20 points. Well, without a kickoff return from Charlie Jones against the Giants, or against the Browns, this Bengals offense hasn't scored 20 points in 3 weeks. That's with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and for 2 of those 3 weeks, T. Higgins. It's mind-boggling how they've taken this far of a step back over the last few weeks, and it's because of things that I don't really understand. Joe Burrow is still playing elite football, and the offense isn't scoring points. I don't really know why that's the case, because there's nothing I can point to other than a lackluster run game, which we saw earlier this year when we were scoring 30 points. So, and that's, I guess, where the frustration comes from, and I guess we're starting to see that I might not be okay with this team being bad, because it really is frustrating when you can't put your finger on a lot of the holes. And that's why it's a lot easier to swallow this defense being bad for me, is because I can point to many, many positions out there where I don't think the guys are cut out for it. On offense, I feel like for the most part, we have dudes, and we're unable to score for 3 weeks in a row. It's incredibly frustrating.
Well, I think that we talked about it so much with the Philadelphia Eagles last week about how they can beat you in so many different ways. The truth of the matter is that the Bengals offensively can only beat you one way, and that's in the air. They're not going to beat you on the ground. You don't have to worry about it. And so ultimately, as a defense, you can sit back, you can try to defend against Joe Burrow, and you can just say, okay, if you want to run the ball and try to gain 10 yards, then go ahead and do it. But Joe Burrow is going to have to beat us, because there's no threat of a running game with this team. And then the problem is that you get situations like you got this weekend where you get the turnover on downs. Philadelphia goes and they get their field goal. Well, that makes it a 2-possession game with less than 14 minutes left to play. And now all of a sudden you're scrambling a little bit and you have to try to make something happen. And you try to force the ball down the field. And next thing you know, you're throwing an interception with 12 minutes left in the game because you think that, oh, shoot, my defense isn't good enough to hold this Philadelphia offense and not score. So we have to score a touchdown every time, and we got to do it quickly, because if we don't, we may not get the ball back, or Philadelphia is going to go score again, or whatever it may have been. And so it just changes your approach on offense. But that's one of the challenges of not having a running game. And I realize that there's so many different pieces that go into it. But when this offense can't run the ball and there's no threat of running the ball, this defense can sit back, as the Eagles like to do anyway, and make you just pick them apart. We saw it on the first drive of the game. I mean, the run game is so bad that the Eagles could play cloud defense on that first drive, and they still held them to 5 carries for 10 yards on that first drive. If you don't have to respect one portion of the game, then it makes it so much easier as a defense to call that play. So I think that's really what it comes down to offensively. Defensively, we know the issues that are there. I mean, there's 0 pass rush, 3 pressures in the game this weekend, 0 sacks of Jalen Hurts. I realize that he's a mobile quarterback and that he's pretty dang good, but you talked about it on Thursday. You wanted to make Jalen Hurts beat you. Well,
yeah, I did.
16
he did.
for 20, my guy.
Yeah, he went 15 of 15 to end the game, and one of my college roommates is from Philadelphia, and as soon as that game ended, little did I know it, Chatterbox Bengals was clipped up, and he felt free to send it back to me. So I guess that's the glory of being on here and talking about the Bengals matchups every week, is you're gonna you're going to sound like a fool every now and then, and I sure did asking Jalen Hurts to beat us with his arm because that's exactly what happened. It was a dominant game from Hurts, and I think it comes back to the lack of pass rush. Look, I'm not ready to give Jalen Hurts a ton of credit, and maybe that's me just doubling down on my takes, which I've been known to do, but you said only 3 pressures and only 2 pressures from guys not named Trey Hendrickson, BJ Hill, 1 hurry, Joseph Osai, 1 QB hit. 0 combined pressures on 54 pass rush attempts for Sheldon Rankins, Sam Hubbard, Miles Murphy, McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins, and Lawrence Guy. Whoopee, Craig. There we go. Love these guys really giving it their all. I mean, it's just abysmal. We sat here every week as we began to get healthy on this defensive line, right? And looked at these numbers and said, all right, Lawrence Guy, we got him off the street. He's here. Sam Hubbard, he's here. If we're able to get guys just a little bit better than that level, then we're going to be just fine. Well, Miles Murphy comes in, and he's ranked PFF 1 spot below Sam Hubbard. So not quite, but man, it's incredibly frustrating. Every single new piece the Bengals roll out there, every single new guy the Bengals seem to get on defense falls flat on their face and doesn't give this team what you're hoping they're going to give it, the boost you're hoping they're going to give it. And we're running out of things to hope for on defense to turn this around. And I know we've talked about the playoff hopes of this season being dashed, the Super Bowl hopes being dashed, and all that stuff. But at this point, I'm just looking for a silver lining on this defense to get excited about moving forward in a time that's supposed to be our Super Bowl window with Joe Burrow at the helm of this offense. And I'm struggling to find any pieces in this defense to get excited about long term. The guys that we were hoping to see some kind of blossom from when they got more snaps. I mean, we just saw Jordan Battle fill on a play-action pass and get beat over the top for a big-time touchdown that broke that game open. Incredibly frustrating things from these young guys, and it leads you to believe that maybe them not playing earlier in the season wasn't as crazy as a lot of us fans made it out to be. Maybe they just weren't ready. And maybe the poor safety play that we saw from Von Bell and Geno Stone and the poor edge rushing, I know Miles Murphy was hurt, but more so on the interior, was just the best that we had. And that is an incredibly hard place to be. And that's when I think the conversation needs to turn towards the front office, because getting this much lackluster talent on a roster at the same time, I don't know how you expect to win. You could have the best coach in the world. You can't win with this kind of production from these players.
Yeah, I think you covered everything there. I don't think we need to, beat a dead horse on this one. At the end of the day, so much of this still falls on the front office.
Yeah.
And, I 100% think that Zach Taylor needs to eat some of the blame, especially offensively,
For sure.
because I do think that there's enough weapons there offensively. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm struggling because I want to believe that Lou Anarumo is putting this defense in the position to be successful, but I watch games and I see other teams with speedy outside rushers, edge rushers, guys like Brian Burns that we saw, so many different guys across the league who are able to affect the pass game in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And they're running stunts to get them open. They're running different looks. And I feel like the defense is a little stale, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't think that they do anything overly creative to create mismatches or to get guys open, but I also don't think that they have the talent to really be doing it. And so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if you're Lou Anarumo and you've got Sam Hubbard, who's slow as all get out on your edge, and he's your number one edge rusher, like, how creative can you really get? It's not like he's going to be able to run a stunt and win that stunt because he's so slow. Like, his get off is so slow. And so it just continue to question, okay, well, how do we get better and how do we fix it? There's too many holes, Jacob. I really don't know where to start. What I think I know, and this is the difficult part, is that the Bengals aren't going to do anything.
Correct.
And that's one of the most frustrating parts of this whole scenario, is that you look around the league, and today was a great example of it. Okay. Today, Deontay Johnson gets traded from Carolina to Baltimore for a pick swap. Baltimore gives up their 5th, gets Carolina's 6th, and Deontay Johnson. Josh Uche goes from New England to Kansas City for a 6th round pick. These are not expensive moves to make to pick up impact players. Josh Uche's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson will likely be the number one wide receiver in Kansas City once he learns the playbook. Like
Baltimore.
And they're giving it up. Baltimore, will be the number one wide receiver in Baltimore once he picks up the playbook, above Zay Flowers for sure. And like, the Bengals just don't make that kind of move. And if they really believe that they have to win 7 of the next 9, and they really believe that they can win 7 of the next 9, then why on earth wouldn't you make some sort of move to try and improve your team? And it's clear that this defensive line is a huge hole.
Yeah.
So if Josh Uche is available out there for a 6th round pick, your 6th rounder is better than Kansas City's 6th rounder. So if you offered them the same exact thing, they would pick it to send it to you. You've already played New England. They don't have to worry about Josh Uche coming back and dominating them in a game in the future or anything like that. Why wouldn't they? So the thing I'll start with is that regardless of what we talk about, the Bengals aren't going to do anything this year. And the next step is, okay, well, you got a lot of holes to address in the free agency and in the draft. Well, they don't draft well either. So it's kind of a situation where I don't know how you really get better, because Duke Tobin's been in this role for 25 years. He hasn't been able to address the holes. Zach Taylor over the last 5 years, not necessarily been able to address the holes. And it's just an endless story. And, if we want to be honest, there's a lot of holes. Interior offensive line for sure. Defensive line, especially on the edge, for sure. Secondary seems to be a position of need right now. It's literally all over the field. You have holes in places that you can get better. And so from a how to fix it, it almost feels like you got to start over, Jacob.
I don't disagree. When we were talking about how to fix this team in the office over the last few days, the conclusion we came to was about a 2 or 3 offseason long rebuild is what we're looking at. And can you win during a rebuild? Can you win on the fly? Absolutely. You just need a little bit of a perfect storm. I'm talking about until we get to a point where I have a roster that I'm confident in up and down. Was I confident in the roster in the 2021 Super Bowl team up and down? Absolutely not. And with Joe Burrow at the helm, you can win with a lackluster roster. So don't hear 2-3 year rebuild and think we're packing it in for 7 and 9 seasons for the next 2 or 3 years. That's not the case. And one of those off seasons is this off season. So if you hit on this last draft, like it certainly looks like you have, you've jump-started that process of fixing a lot of these holes. You hit on another draft. Then you're 2 years into that 2-3 year rebuild. It's amazing how quick that can work if you hit on draft picks. But what have we seen since Zach Taylor got to town? Not a lot of hitting on draft picks. Not looking at this year's class yet, because I think it's a little too early to fairly grade any of those players as hits or misses. But going from 2019 to 2023, Zach Taylor and company have hit on 9 of 41 draft selections. 9 of 41. And of those 9, you have to think 3 of them have fallen right into his lap. 33, T. Higgins falling out of the first round, Jamar Chase at 5, Joe Burrow at 1. All 3 of those, no-brainer picks. And if you didn't take T. Higgins, you were going to take Michael Pittman, who's also been pretty dang good in Indianapolis. Outside of that, you don't have a whole lot. You have 1 hit in 2019 with Jermaine Pratt, Logan Wilson as well in 2020, McPherson joining Chase in 2021, Cam Taylor-Britt, if you still want to count him, I did. And then Cordell Volson getting a starter that late in the draft at guard. I'm going to count him as a hit, even though he hasn't been that great of a player. And then Andre Yoshivas playing as many snaps as he has already as a 6th-round pick in 2023. I'm counting that as a hit. So even of the 9, you have a couple reaches. The drafting has been so bad that if you're a team that's unable or unwilling, it's not unable, they're absolutely able. A team that's unwilling to improve your team during the season, the only way you can improve your team then is the draft. And if the Bengals are going to be unwilling to trade those late-round picks, then you have to hit on those picks. You want to know some of the Bengals' 6th-round picks that they could have traded for a Josh Uche or a Deontay Johnson in the 2020 to 2021 to 2023 range? How about Trey Hill, Chris Evans, Wyatt Hubert, Jeff Gunther, Brad Robbins, and DJ Ivey? Those guys are certainly helping this team. For a team that can't draft, they certainly treat draft picks like they're gold. And I don't understand it for the life of me. If you were hitting on 60% of your draft picks, then I wouldn't necessarily be mad about holding on to him and not making big-time trades, because you're showing that you can scout talent, get it in the locker room, and have it affect the team in a positive way. Well, we know the Bengals don't scout because they're the only other 32 teams that don't have a scouting department. And then they evidently can't draft either, because over this stretch, they have been unable to consistently hit on guys that don't fall into their lap. It's not a recipe for success, and it's a recipe that's honestly not going to change anytime soon if I had to guess. Duke Tobin has been here since 1999. This front office is not going anywhere. And for the people that are saying the quick fix to this is firing Zach Taylor, spoiler alert, he's not going anywhere either at the end of this season, unless Joe Burrow comes out and says he wants Zach Taylor fired. That is the only way I think Zach Taylor is fired after this season. Otherwise, we're running it back in 2025, hopefully with a better roster, hopefully with a financially invested front office, extending Jamar Chase, bolstering this roster in other positions of need. But top to bottom, this is going to be a very similar team next year. And you have to hope for some kind of drastic change. And I think that's kind of why I'm so down right now, is with this front office, how can you rely on drastic change? I don't think they're going to be willing to make it.
Well, Lance McAllister put it really well today. I don't know if you saw the little post that he made, but he was talking about Joe Burrow and what's been around him since day one. And since day one, he's been surrounded by a head coach that if fired would never be hired anywhere else, a general manager that if fired would never be hired by anyone else, and an owner that no fan base or city would ever want. And so you're wasting Joe Burrow, and every expectation that we have at this point, if we're being honest with ourselves, is that all three of those will be back next year. Mike Brown is too proud to take money from a venture capital firm to be able to pay his players. Duke Tobin clearly isn't going anywhere. If he was, it would have been 20 years ago, not today. And I just don't have any faith that they're going to fire Zach Taylor. I mean, they let Marvin Lewis hang around for 16 years with mediocrity. There's no reason that Zach Taylor is going to go anywhere.
The only thing with that that makes me a little bit confident that they could fire Zach Taylor before that 18-year stretch is because they did extend Joe Burrow. This is a window where you actually could win. If they do extend Jamar Chase, then they are more financially invested than they've ever been. And maybe that is what gets Mike Brown to commit to winning. Maybe. Because all he cares about is money. And if he's financially invested, but it's not the same as it is now, money-wise.
Well, not money-wise, but you still had the talent.
You're right, but
you still had the expectations.
The only thing I've ever thought Mike Brown cares about is money. And the only reason I think 100%. He could act differently here is because he has money wrapped up in the success of the football team. And that's the only hope I have.
Well, the video is going around now. You guys talked about it on Off the Bench this morning of the interview with Andrew Whitworth from, I think it was last year sometime, where he talked about his contract negotiation at the end of his career with the Bengals. And he brought it up, and I think it's an interesting point, is that, Katie and Troy are now managing that process for the Bengals.
Yeah.
So, Mike Brown probably sets a budget, but I don't know how involved he is anymore in that specific piece. Maybe Katie and Troy are. We've seen a lot of efforts from the Bengals to increase their cash flow. And I think it's very intentional.
Yeah.
I just don't know what I struggle with is I look at the Bengals and I look at any other team. Like the Bengals are selling out basically every game. They've got their stadium that they're selling out and that fans are there and buying merchandise. What is any different from the Bengals and any other team financially other than just the owner is cheap? Like every team in the NFL is making money. It's not like any of them are losing money. All of them just choose to spend differently. If we're being honest, the Bengals only have like $9 million in cap space, so it's not like they have sitting on a ton.
Right.
But $9 million can get you a lot now.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I just the end of the day, what I mainly took away from that interview with Andrew Whitworth was not necessarily about their lack of desire to pay him, but just how they handled the situation as a whole. You know what I mean? And it goes back to all those like off-season team grades where you hear about like the not on the field grades of each team, like the training staff and the training room and the locker room and all of these things. And for 50 years, the Bengals were at or near the bottom of that list in terms of how they treated their players. And it just tells me a little bit of how they view this team. We talk about it with the Reds too. This is an ownership group who's not in it to be successful. They're just in it because they view it as an investment. And it's really unfortunate because obviously the Brown family has been instrumental in the development of football as a whole. And you'd like to believe that Mike would carry on that legacy and that pride in building something valuable in Cincinnati. And it just doesn't seem to be a priority for him.
Certainly does not, and it's a broken record over the last much longer than I've been alive. I mean, the entire 20 years of my Bengals fandom has been a lot of the same, and it's been going on far, far before that. It's been a lot of doom and gloom today. I want to give you a chance to see if you have any bright spots on this team going forward. The one obvious one that all Bengals fans can hang their hat on at night is that Joe Burrow, still the quarterback of this team. Still a top 5 quarterback in the league, top 3 quarterback in the league, top 4 maybe quarterback in the league. He's absolutely incredible. Every single week goes out there and is performing. I know the offensive numbers haven't been what we've wanted so far, but this guy's great. We still have a generational talent at quarterback, something that I don't think Bengals fans ever necessarily expected to come into this building. And it's something that I'm going to work through this week to get really excited about watching every Sunday. Regardless of playoff hopes, regardless of Super Bowl hopes, I get to watch Joe Burrow quarterback my favorite team. And that is incredibly exciting. And I'm going to get up for that every single week. And if we win a few, and I can get back excited about ruining another team's hopes, great. That's awesome. Otherwise, I'm excited to watch Joe Burrow beat the Raiders this week. Craig, you were doing a lot of talking there about the downsides. Do you have any positives you can give us for where this team's at right now?
I'll give you 3.
Love that.
The first is Joe Burrow. You touched on it. I truly believe that he's a quarterback that can take you to a Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that there's any question about that. The next positive I'll give you is Amarius Mims.
Yes.
Top 15 in the NFL in PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric on true pass sets. 0 quarterback hits allowed, 0 sacks allowed. That puts him in the same rankings of guys like Penei Sewell, Laramie Tunsil, Tristan Wirfs. The list goes on and on. Amarius Mims seems to be the real deal.
That's
and
right.
That is a very big positive for this team moving forward. The last one that I will give you is that at the end of the day, the AFC sucks.
Yeah.
10 teams in the NFL have 2 wins or fewer going into week 9. 7 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them are in the AFC.
Ooh.
7 AFC teams have 2 wins or less going into week 9.
Ooh.
So when you hear Jacob and I talk about how, no, this team's not very good, and then on the other side say, oh, but they can still make the playoffs, it's because the AFC is terrible. And so when you're talking about positives about this team for this year specifically, it's that they could get hot at the right time, they could sneak in, and they could still make the playoffs and make a run. And I feel like they have the weapons to be able to do that if they figure some things out. And quite frankly, the AFC is still lining up to a place. It may only take 8 wins. I just don't know what it's going to end up being at the end of this year in terms of what it takes to get into the playoffs. The AFC is not good. The Dolphins 2-5, the Patriots and Jets 2-6. The Broncos are a little bit of a surprise at 5-3.
The Bengals have better odds to make the playoffs right now than the Broncos.
Yep.
Yeah,
the Bengals have a chance later on in the season.
That's right. And sitting at 3-5, I'm still pretty confident in saying no one wants to play Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
Yep. Look at the teams above them in the wild card race. The Broncos at 5-3. They still have Bo Nix as their quarterback. I don't really know what to expect. Just being honest, the Chargers haven't looked great, but they're 4-3, so they're technically ahead. Their running game is a little bit scary. Justin Herbert looked a little bit better this week. the Ravens and Steelers, whoever you want to put in, technically the Ravens right now in the wild card race. I think that Russell looked a lot better this week than he had in the first week. But I still don't know what really to make of the Steelers and Ravens. And the Colts are a dumpster fire despite their 4-4 record. There's a path.
There is.
And so as much as I don't want to admit it when I think about this team, the season's not over, Jacob. The season's not over.
You said it, not me. You said it, not me. Next 4 games against AFC
they're still
opponents.
A bad football team, though.
They were a bad football team in 2021 for a lot of the season. They made a Super Bowl. So
Yep.
Next 4 games against AFC opponents. Raiders come to town this week, then to Baltimore, to LA to face the Chargers, and then back home against the Steelers. Every stretch of games the rest of the year is the most important stretch of games. The last 4 games were the most important stretch of games, and we dropped 2 of those 4. Now, we play 4 AFC teams in a row. There's no wiggle room in these 4 games. You cannot lose any of these 4 games. 7-2 in the next 9, that's great. That's all fun and dandy. I would love to do that and win 10 games. Don't think it's going to happen. If you're going to make the playoffs this year, you have to remain competitive in the AFC record department because it's going to come down to some tiebreakers in the wild card. And right now the Bengals are 1-3 in the AFC. If you don't stack AFC wins here, it's going to be really painful looking at that in the hunt graphic at the end of the season when the Bengals have no tiebreakers and no chance at getting in. This 4 weeks against the Raiders, Ravens, Chargers, and Steelers, and then the 2 at the end of the year against the Titans and the Broncos outside of the divisional games, absolutely crucial for the way this season goes. If you're going to slip up in Dallas. Slip up in Dallas. That's fine. Win the rest of your games. I think it's a recipe for success, Craig.
I'm always such a pessimist, but like every time I look at this schedule, I'm like, oh, surely they can win 5 or 6 of these games and sneak into the playoffs, right? Right?
I know. It's like it's right there. It's right there.
Oh my God, Jacob.
I might be getting you back in a little bit.
Listen, this is a bad football team. They're not good. Defensively, they might be terrible.
You're right.
Offensively, they haven't been great.
You're right. But
they still are better than half of the AFC.
That's right. And that's all that matters.
And that's all that matters.
It's who's the best team in the NFL that year. Not who's the best team if you're a good team all time. The Bengals could be the best team in the NFL on that one weekend in February, and the banner hangs just the same. Doesn't matter to me how we get in. Once we get into the dance, I'll buy all the way back in on this team. And with this 4th place schedule, there is a route, but we have to prove that we can beat some teams. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and we'll do it here briefly.
The Bengals might be able. The Bengals might be able to lose. They might be able to literally lose the Ravens game, lose both Steelers matchups, and still make the playoffs. It sounds terrible to say. Obviously, you want to win those division matchups, but outside of the Ravens and the two games against the Steelers, you play the Raiders, the Chargers, the Titans, the Browns, and the Broncos. If you can't win those 5 games, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs anyway.
You're right. Maybe this team doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs. Steal
one of those against your the 3 games of in division rivals. I don't know, Jacob. I'm still out on them being good.
That's fair.
I might be sneaking a look at the playoffs.
Woo-hoo-hoo. Might get me back in. I said I was out on the playoffs this morning. Just takes one talk with old Craig Sandlin to get you back in. But the last thing,
exactly who you thought would bring you back.
That's right. That's right. It's always the best. So a good surprise always makes you happy. But the last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap it up is the window. And I think everyone knows what quote I'm referencing here. Joe Burrow was asked about the Super Bowl window for the Cincinnati Bengals, and his answer, one that went viral and everyone talked about basically forever, was that the window in Cincinnati is the entirety of his career. As long as he's at quarterback for the Bengals window to win a Super Bowl is open. I think after last year with the injury and how the season transpired with Jake Browning at the end, and then the way this year has transpired early, losing to the Patriots in week 1 and watching it all kind of fall through your fingertips as the season progresses makes me and I'm sure a lot of Bengals fans alike worry about the status of that window. How open do you think it is right now? And is there an ability to push it more open back to where it was maybe a few years ago? Because right now, I know coming into this season, a lot of the talk was that this is the most talented roster Joe Burrow is going to have the rest of his career. T. Higgins is going to leave after this year. Jamar Chase is going to take up big money. You're not going to be able to spend it on a second wide receiver. Joe Burrow is going to have to do more with less than he's ever had in his career before this point, talking about next season. Well, now this season's already done for, basically. We're now just talking about if we're going to get back into playoffs. But for the point of this conversation, this season is done. It's been blown. A great Joe Burrow season, a healthy Joe Burrow season to this point, has been blown on a 3-5 record 8 weeks in, and certainly an uphill battle to make the playoffs. I feel like the window's more closed than I ever expected it to be at this point. But it's certainly still cracked. We just talked about how bad the AFC is, and if you can get in the playoffs, then the window's always open for all of those teams. So who knows what can happen, but it really feels like that window closed a little bit more than I ever expected it to really, really fast.
Here's the thing. This Bengals team right now, to me, feels a little bit like Sisyphus. And Sisyphus is the guy who is apparently continually trying to force the boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down every time he gets towards the top, right?
Yep.
You've got Joe Burrow, who the window should always be open, and he's pushing it up the hill, pushing it up the hill, pushing it up the hill. But then you've got this Bengals franchise and this Bengals organization just constantly falling back down every time he gets towards the top. And it's just going to be this endless cycle of inertia and things in motion staying in motion and gravity pulling the rock back down and all this other whatever. At the end of the day, Joe Burrow's good enough for a window to be open at all times. This Bengals organization feels like it is complete opposite to everything that Joe Burrow could do with his career.
You're absolutely right.
I want to believe that the window is open still and stays open. I personally feel like the only way that happens is if there is a change in one of the 3 leadership positions, whether that's ownership, GM, and or head coach. And it's a name that's been thrown around a lot, but I truly believe it. If you put Ben Johnson in charge of this offense, that window slides open so far, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But instead, you've got Zach Taylor. And I spent some time, I don't know why this hasn't been talked about more. I know everybody likes to talk about Zach Taylor and how he got fired from Cincinnati, the University of Cincinnati, after one season being an offensive play caller. But he's had 2 years of calling plays in his career. In 2015, he was with the Miami Dolphins, a team where Joe Philbin got fired after 4 games because they were so bad. And then with the University of Cincinnati in 2016, a team where Tommy Tuberville resigned after the season. So he's got 2 years of offensive play calling under his belt before he gets this head coaching job. And he insists on calling the plays. And I think as long as Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin, and Mike Brown are the ones calling the shots, you're going to continually have this Sisyphus effect of Joe Burrow rolling the ball up the hill, feeling like you're really close, and then it just rolling back down to the bottom.
A brutal place to be. The worst comparison I've seen, and I'm blanking on who it was, but I saw someone compared this Bengals team to the Mark Sanchez Jets. Remember the 2 years of Mark Sanchez with the Jets? Back-to-back AFC championships, and everyone across the country thinking, is that poverty franchise finally turning it around? And then the big bad Jets reared their ugly head and put out that fire before it could even get burning. And the Bengals had their 2-year run in the sun, and hopefully they're able to get back. Because I know leaving the Super Bowl in 2021, me and basically every other Bengals fan in the entire world only said 3 things, and it was, we will be back. We will be back. It was the thought after that game. We will be back, and we will be back soon. Well, now it's been 3 years, and we haven't been back. And the questions are mounting, and the issues on the team are mounting, and the holes on the roster are mounting, and the questions about the coach and the GM are mounting. Changes are going to have to be made. Dynasties rebuild on the fly. That's why they're able to win so many championships in a row. The Patriots won how many different championships with a different core? You don't have to have the same core to get back. You just have to be willing to change. And the Bengals are going to have to be willing to change their organizational model in order to get back to the top. The only way to open this window all the way up is to stop acting like the Bengals, in all honesty. You need to act like you have an elite quarterback. You need to act like you have a chance to win a championship right now. And you see all these other teams making moves, recognizing that they have elite quarterbacks and a chance to win a championship, and the Bengals sit idly by on their hands. It's year after year with the same problems, and hopefully it changes sometime soon. The Bengals are sitting at 3-5 with 4 straight AFC games coming up. Joe Burrow said you have to win 7 of 9 to get in. I certainly think he's right. For today's edition of Chatterbox Bengals, that's going to do it for Jacob Tissett and Craig Sandlin. We'll see you again on Thursday, live from Champions Grill. Myself, Elliot Rearing, Casey McAllister, previewing this weekend's matchup with the Las Vegas Raiders. Hopefully a Bengals win, get back on track, start stacking them. Can't lose many if you're going to win 7 of 9, Craig, so got to get a win this week. We'll see you guys next time.